Fowke, song collector, radio commentator, author, educator, civil libertarian, champion of Canadian folk life.
O Canada, terre de nos aïeux.
I would say that on the whole, Canadian songs are just as rich and varied as those of the United States, but they aren't nearly as well known, even in Canada.
In a career which spanned 4 decades, Edith Fowke produced a remarkable anthology of books, articles, radio programs, recordings, and lectures, all on the rich variety of the culture she loved, Canadian folk songs and folklore.
But still we love Saskatchewan. We're proud to say we're native ones. So count your blessings drop by drop. Next year we'll have a bumper crop.
Edith Margaret Fulton was born April 30th, 1913 in Lumsden, Saskatchewan, where her parents, William and Margaret, settled after emigrating from Northern Ireland. She attended the University of Saskatchewan, graduating in 1933 with a bachelor's degree in English and history. That same year, she joined the socialist organization, which later became the New Democratic Party, and remained an active and impassioned member for more than 20 years. In 1937, Edith returned to the university in pursuit of a master's degree. It was there she met Frank Fowke, whom she married in 1938. Frank encouraged Edith's blossoming interest in folk music.
It was rather a gradual process. We had a record player during the war, and we found that we were buying nearly all the records of folk songs that were available at that time, which wasn't very much.
By the end of the decade, Edith was sharing the couple's growing music library with the Canadian Broadcast Corporation radio program called Folk Song Time. Before long, she was writing, producing, and hosting the show, which thrived for 20 years and made her a household name. In 1952, she began collaborating with musicologist Richard Johnston on a landmark anthology called Folk Songs of Canada.
She was a many-faceted gem. A student of mine said that there was a lady by the name of Edith Fowke who claimed that she had enough material to put together for a book of folk songs of Canada, and would I be interested in working with her?
Their book included song lyrics, sheet music, and a short historical commentary about each song. It was soon followed by a record album of the same name, and together the Folk Songs of Canada duo set the pattern for all the books and recordings to come.
Trois beaux canards s'en vont baignant, roulis, roulant, ma boule roulant. En roulant, ma boule roulant, en roulant, ma boule.
Edith was captivated by the wealth of Canadian folk songs, but felt frustrated by the lack of available recorded material. So, in 1956, she purchased her first tape recorder and headed for Peterborough County, Ontario.
Here you find people whose ancestors came over in 1825 and settled in Peterborough. And the songs have come in a direct line of descent from 1825 to the people living there now.
Mary and William Towns were Edith's first informants.
She and her husband ran a little general store in a town called Douro, not far from Peterborough.
They introduced Edith to others in the area, and she recorded many of them in the town's home right behind the store.
That iron-bound monster come bearing down on us, and high in the air her rebel flag flew. And her pennants of treason so proudly a-waving, determined to conquer the Cumberland's crew.
Frank Fowke once said that Edith could charm an old song out of almost anyone by telling them, "Oh, you just sing anything you like and I'll see if the tape recorder is working." Folkways and other labels released much of the material she recorded in a series of record albums. Edith collected Eskimo lullabies and sea shanties, bawdy ballads, and lumbering songs. She collected the songs of children at play and published them in the award-winning Sally Go Round the Sun and Ring Around the Moon.
Sally go round the sun, Sally go round the moon, Sally go round the chimney top every afternoon. Going over, going under, standing attention like a soldier with the 1, 2, 3. He rolled the others with his clap, clap, clap.
Songs of Work and Freedom, a collection of labor songs she and Joe Glaser published in 1960, spoke to the strength of her political commitment and her courage to deal with controversial subjects. A founding member of the Canadian Society for Traditional Music, Edith Fowke edited every issue of its Canadian Folk Music Journal from 1973 until 1996. Edith Fowke's endeavors were not limited to her recordings, writings, and radio program. She was also instrumental with the development of the Mariposa Folk Festival. She taught folk songs and folklore courses to an increasing number of young ethnomusicologists and lectured throughout North America. Often awarded for her efforts, Edith Fowke was a member of the Order of Canada and a Fellow of the Royal Society. She was also the recipient of honorary degrees from Brock University, Trent University, York University, and the University of Regina. This confirmation of her efforts pleased her greatly. "In this field, I'm entirely self-taught," she said, "but in the United States, they keep calling me Dr. Fowke. Now I won't have to disclaim it."
Oh, Canada, our home and native land.
Edith Fowke truly believed that folk songs reflected the lives of the people who sang them, and that assertion gave the songs a lasting and honored value. She was an inspiring teacher, but never an ivory tower academic. She was interested in folk songs and other kinds of folklore for aesthetic reasons, and because she regarded them as valuable historical expressions of Canadian culture. She took pleasure in what she did and made lasting friendships, not just with the musical luminaries of her day, but with the lesser-known singers whose songs she gathered. When asked why she had devoted so much of her life to the study of folk music and folklore, she replied, "I'm an ordinary person, and what ordinary people do is important." For Edith Fowke, it was the songs, stories, and causes of ordinary people which sparked her interest and fueled her long and prolific career in an extraordinary way.